You were in Portland, and what was the exact rally that was going on? What was it called? Did it have a name?
It was something like Protect Portland. So it was organized by Rose City Antifa and its allies. And by its allies, I'm referring to the local chapter of the Democratic Socialist America that came out to support them in numbers.
And what are they protecting Portland from?
They allege fascists.
Fascists, but just in general? I mean, is there like a particular thing they're worried about?
There were two right-wing events happening that day that they were counter-demonstrating against. There was on one part of downtown, the Proud Boys were holding a flag-waving event that was completely peaceful. There was no actually
flag-waving, American flag-waving?
Correct.
Okay.
And a lot of Portlanders found that provocative and a manifestation of fascistic violence. And in another part of downtown, there was a men's rights activist who was holding a rally. It was titled for victims of domestic terrorism. It was an anti-Antifa event. So,
a men's rights activist?
Yes.
That was doing an anti-fascist or anti-Antifa?
Correct.
Well, what? Boy, it seems like a whole lot to do about nothing. Flag waving and anti-Antifa. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
can I set the context for the city of Portland?
It's a mess.
You have listeners and viewers all over the world. So Portland, Oregon is a extremely progressive city in the Pacific Northwest of the U.S. And I call it a political monoculture because really it's not just... You're more likely to find open socialists there than you would find like a regular Republican or conservative. And within this sort of echo chamber of just leftist politics, it's become also a hotbed for far-left militancy. So Rose City Antifa is, you could call it like the local chapter movement of Antifa. It's one of the oldest in the country. It's very large in Portland, and they hold what you could call protests, but they're protests that always devolve into riots where they essentially take over parts of downtown and attack people, attack their ideological opponents, and do it frequently with impunity. I mean, I wasn't the only one attacked that day. There were two other people who were bashed on the head and had very severe lacerations to the face and head. You may recall the footage from October of last year when there was an elderly driver who was attacked on the streets.
Yeah, they were directing traffic,
exactly.
Right? And somehow or another, the mayor thought it was a good idea to let this take place. Is that the case? And they told the police to stand down. Is that true?
So, I mean, the next part of this journey for me will be the legal aspect of it. And it seems like something stinks in Portland. The issue is really not with the rank and file officers. They're following orders to not intervene. So I had been assaulted and criminally harassed before the mob beating. People were throwing milkshakes at my face and head within eyesight of police who were watching in downtown. And both of these were reported, and the answer that I heard that day, as I've heard many times before when I've been assaulted by Antifa, is that we will not question, approach, or detain the suspect because this could incite the crowd.
Okay, so this is why this has exacerbated, or this is why this has become such a big deal in Portland, because of this attitude, because Portland seems to be the hotbed right now for this kind of stuff. Is that fair to say?
I think it is.
So is this the mayor? I mean, who's the one who's giving the orders to the police to tell them to allow this stuff to take place?
Well, I'm crowdfunding for the legal fund right now, and we are going to hold accountable whoever is responsible for dereliction of duty, where the evidence leads us. So Portland has an odd governance system in that the mayor, who is up for re-election, by the way, is also the police commissioner. So...
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
How does that work?
It was an old system that it inherited, and it just never changed.
From the Wild West? Like, that sounds ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. You can see all the political the conflicts and in conflicts of interest that
Yeah.
would arise, right?
Yeah, shitload. How did you get involved in this? Like, why? First of all, why were they angry at you?
I work as a journalist. I'll name like places that I've been published before. I write and I do video and I do podcasts. So my written work has been published in the Wall Street Journal, the National Review, Spectator, New York Post. I'm also on the editorial team of Quillette magazine. And one of my beats, among several, is about far left militancy, particularly in Portland. To me, what I was noticing was that the national and local media coverage had a particular blind spot when it came to their coverage on Antifa. There was all this sensitivity to the quote-unquote far right and white nationalism or white identity extremism. But they could not or would not recognize the militancy that was on the left. And Portland seemed to be one of the places for ground zero, particularly after 2016. We had very violent rioting in downtown. A segment of the population could not accept the election results in November. And so they did $1 million in damage, setting fires and destroying properties and businesses. And at that time, I was a graduate student working at the student paper, and I did a story on that. And I came out to witness, and it this was a major American city, but it felt like I was in Afghanistan or Iraq, just with all these fires and explosions and people running around with bats while masked up. And that was the first time I really became familiar with Antifa, and I took an interest in it. And I saw over and over that the media coverage was basically really sort of whitewashing them, kind of like referring to them as anti-fascists, giving them that propaganda victory. And Antifa as a movement, they're masters of doublespeak and disinformation. So it starts with the name. Antifa is short for anti-fascist, but I never refer to them as that because that's ceding the ground to them. When they say that they are defending a community, self-defense, it actually is referring to premeditated violence and offensive violence. So I started going to covering this more and more. After I left the student paper, I started writing for some national and international publications. And internationally, there was a set of readers who were interested in what the hell is going on in Portland. Why are there these continued scenes of street brawls and anarchy over and over? What are the variables that are causing this? And I thought that I could try to shine a light on it. And by doing so, Antifa became enraged with my work. And particularly they've hated me since last year, but they started really escalating on the 1st of May Day. So this year was when I was physically assaulted by them for the first time. They were very upset that I wrote a story for the New York Post where there was a series of, and this is one of the other beats that I work on, is hate crime hoaxes. Portland earlier this year had this huge panic over serious allegations of LGBT people claiming that there were marauding right-wing gangs driving around trying to kill people with bats, with hammers, trying to kidnap them. And these were all rumors that were reported on social media. It caused a huge frenzy. Even the mayor had to come out and, issue a statement about how he was concerned. There was an emergency town hall with the local queer center. And so I started looking into all these allegations. There was 15 of them. And I found that of the 15, only one was reported to police. And what was reported to police and documented in the report was entirely different from the GoFundMe, where over $10,000 was raised for this trans activist. She had alleged that one night, walking home, transphobic people had beat her with the bat and knocked her unconscious. Police reports said that she was extremely intoxicated and likely fell, and there was no evidence that anybody had assaulted her. So when this story came out, because Antifa and the Democratic Socialists of America in Portland were really involved in peddling this hate crime fear in Portland, and I just kind of, threw water on this panic that they had been flaming. And so on the 1st of May, there was a riot that I was covering, and one of the masked Antifa people went up and sprayed me with, I think it was bear mace, some type of chemical that blinds you and burns you.
Yeah, I saw that video.
Yeah. So there was no police that was there. That Antifa event was publicly advertised on Facebook and all that. So over and over, like, Antifa is very transparent about their calls for people to come to their stuff and to engage in this physical confrontation that they call self-defense. And the police either stay away or on purpose or are told to stay away. So
it's very confusing because when you watch the videos, they're just macing people. They're macing people who disagree with them. Like, they're yelling at each other, and then someone will come along and mace people. And for the police to not step in and do something, I don't think there's another city in the country that would allow something like that. It doesn't seem like it makes any sense at all, because you're not talking about people that are being physically attacked and that are macing someone to protect themselves, or even a threat of being physically attacked. They're just disagreeing with each other and yelling at each other, and then someone will come along and start macing people. And I've seen it many times. And I think there's also a real problem with people wearing masks. Whether their ideology makes sense or not, when you put people in masks and then you have a bunch of people yelling and escalating, and then there's teams, there's Team Antifa versus Team, anybody opposing them, they feel is a white supremacist or a Nazi. And this is just how they've chosen to frame it, to dehumanize people. And then you see them attack people. I'm sure you're aware of the girl who got maced in the face because she had a hat on that said "Make Bitcoin Great Again," but it was the same color hat as the "Make America Great Again" hat, and she got maced in the face. And she got hit with something too, right? Didn't she get hit in the face with something? Anyway.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Comicsgate Art stream. Sorry for my silence. Just working on character designs, but I'm also listening to this Joe Rogan, Andy No interview. I hope this video doesn't get taken down. It'll probably get a copyright claim. I'm okay with that. I don't make money on these anyway. And I didn't monetize this video regardless, even though I could. So I'm just giving this a listen. But while I'm doing this, I want you guys to notice the way that Joe Rogan is talking about this situation. I know that he's, annoying for being kind of a wet noodle on calling out the left, and I know that it's not his job to, be some kind of activist or whatever, but he's talking to a guy, but bear in mind, he's talking to a guy who has been physically assaulted, physically assaulted by Antifa. Like, they beat his ass, and they put him in the hospital, and now he has cognitive problems because of the brain hemorrhage. Like, literally, he says he has cognitive problems. He has problems with memory. He has problems with, thinking straight. If you watch the video, he's like leaning to one side, just like when he was on, I think he was on Brett Weinstein's podcast, and I watched part of that. The guy is like different. He's gonna be different. It might take some time. He might heal, but the point is, the guy is changed because of Antifa's assault. And notice that Joe Rogan, and a lot of people still do this shit, they frame this issue as though it's both sides are, have some explaining to do, Lucy shit. And I'm sorry, but I haven't seen, outside of Charlottesville, which I think you could even argue was sort of like an unforeseeable accident. Like, I don't think anyone in Charlottesville that was there for the Unite the Right rally was looking to hurt anyone. I think that they were there to speak, and They had all of their shit in order, and Antifa showed up and took a situation that didn't have to be violent and made it violent. And I stand by that. I honestly believe that, but there's no way we'll ever know because that's not how things turned out. But he is making it something that it just isn't. Unless there's something about, like, if there's some far right shit going on somewhere that I don't know about, this is almost like a completely bullshit conversation that we're listening to, except for, but I think it's important to note because I think that I get Joe Rogan's critics. Anyway, so I'm gonna play more of this, and I might pause and like jump in and say some stuff, but
this kind of shit is really weird. It's really weird and disturbing to see these young people with these idealistic versions of what they're doing. I think.
How the fuck is it still weird, Joe? This has been going on for fucking years now. And if you look at Europe, it's been going on for decades. This is not weird. This is evil. Just call it what it is. Okay? Antifa are acting in a way that is evil. Even if the kids doing it don't know that that's what they're doing, that is what they're doing. You know? Stop saying, I don't understand this. Like, you've had on Jordan Peterson, Eric Weinstein, Brett Weinstein, Dave Rubin, you know, all these people, Ben Shapiro, Milo Yiannopoulos, fucking Mike Cernovich, like all kinds of people all over the political spectrum that have all been dealing with this far left bullshit, this communist shit. And you're still saying, I don't get it. It's just weird, dude. Why? Maybe they should just take some DMT and chill the fuck out. They're acting evil. That's it. They want to hurt people.
I think a lot of the people that are involved in that really think they are fighting fascism. They really do. They really think that Donald Trump and the Proud Boys and white supremacists from Charlottesville carrying tiki torches, that these people represent something horrible that's...
The people in Charlottesville were not white supremacists. The people in Charlottesville were mostly free speech advocates, and some of them were white nationalists. White nationalists are not white supremacists. And there was like one dude with a fucking swastika, like a Nazi flag, and nobody knew who the fuck he was, according to what people say. But even if they were, that's no excuse for Antifa to be violent. Even if they were, even if the Klan was literally marching in the streets of Charlottesville, it's no excuse. Joe, stop it.
Sweeping across the country, and the young people today need to stand up and fight against this. And they're putting on masks, and they're carrying backpacks and whacking people in the head with crowbars. It is really fucking weird to see. And it's really weird that the city of Portland, or all cities in fact, haven't made some sort of a law where you can't walk around in public with a fucking mask on, because that is one of the things that helps these people. It's the same thing that you see on social media when people are anonymous and they say the most horrible, hateful shit. They're saying that because they're not in front of you. You can't recognize them. They don't have to take responsibility for what they're saying.
Oh, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, people should be able to say whatever the fuck they want. What do you mean they don't have to take responsibility? Are you saying that if someone says something mean, you should be able to kick their ass? Because that's what Antifa is literally doing. You are validating them right now. You are validating them right now with this really awful, awful fucking analogy. Stop it.
This is a lot of the same characteristics that a person has when they're wearing a costume. You're dressed in all black with gloves on and a face mask, and you're hitting people with a bike lock. Like, what is that about? Well, what that's about is you're getting away with being anonymous, and you're getting support from all these other people around you. There's this mob mentality that takes place that's well documented with humans, where when you get a group of people together and there's another group, and it's like it's a tribal warfare type situation. And that's what you're seeing with Antifa. And the fact that the Portland police have, I don't know what's going on with them, whether they've been told to not handle that, but the fact they haven't done anything to mitigate this is fucking, it's embarrassing.
The Portland police are under the, they're being told what to do by the fucking mayor, who is basically Antifa himself. He supports Antifa. He's also the commissioner, and he gave the order. So it's a shame. I don't blame the cops. They're following orders. I'm sure that a lot of them are not happy. But if you want to know who's responsible, look at the mayor. And look at the left, because that's where all of it's coming from. Let's call it what it is.
It's a shame. It's terrible. It really is. And it's a travesty.
You asked about the mayor earlier, and if he issued any stand-down orders. There's a statement that was put out after I was attacked by Daryl Turner, who's the president of the police union, and he said very clearly, he called for the mayor to remove the handcuffs of law enforcement so they can enforce the law. And he accused the mayor of politicizing the police department.
Is this mayor popular?
No, he's not. He's hated, well, by moderates because of the things that he allows to happen in the city. But the far left hate him as well. They view him as not radical enough.
Why are they mad at you? Is it just the articles you've written? Because somebody told me that you had been accused of doxing people. Is that true?
Absolutely not true. So this is such an outrageous defamatory claim. So what happened was on May Day at that riot, there was one of the Antifa women had charged in to participate in the fight during the brawl, and one of the right-wing person, he was wearing a mask, I don't know who he was, allegedly had hit her on her head, near her head, on her neck, somewhere like that. She was knocked out. I recognize this woman from her activism that day as the person who sabotaged the sound equipment when James Damore came to Portland State in February of last year. That was an event that I was involved in organizing at Portland State University.
And we should just explain to people, James Damore is the author of the Google memo that was talking about women in tech, that was wildly misrepresented what he had said, and people had claimed that he was this awful sexist. Even the CEO of YouTube said that he enforced harmful gender stereotypes, where while he was citing evolutionary psychology and citing all these different studies on why women gravitate towards particular fields, and even a page and a half encouraging or strategies to encourage more women to get into tech. But it was basically in response to things that Google had written about dealing with the lack of women in tech. What is the problem here? They were looking for a very particular answer, which was sexism. And he was saying, well, it actually has more to do with the choices that women sort of naturally tend to gravitate towards. And he was saying that there was a way to possibly encourage women to get into technology. And he devised these strategies to do so, but was wildly misrepresented. And if you meet the guy, and I've had him on the podcast, he is a soft-spoken sweetheart of a guy. He's not a misogynist, not a mean-spirited person. He was merely looking at the results of studies, and he was looking at real raw data, and that this real tendency that certain people have to gravitate towards certain positions in life.
Yeah, so there were so many misconceptions about James Damore, which is why the student group I was involved in was invited him to come. But Antifa and their allies just could not take that. They tried to shut down the event. They tried to get it canceled. At that event, this one woman, she damaged the sound equipment as she was trying to shut it down. She pulled all these cords out and pushed the soundboard on the ground. It broke. So I recognized her from that day. She was named in the media, and then on May Day, I recognized her. So I named her. I said,
I think he's
this is the name
talking
of the
about
woman who was knocked
Moldy
out.
Locks. I think he's talking about
recognized
Moldy
her
Locks.
from the James Damore event protest where she had damaged equipment. And Antifa had spun that around as me doxing her. That's not doxing. Doxing is where you release people's personal details, such as where they work, where they live, their phone numbers, so that people will...
You identified her.
I named her, yes.
Okay.
But she had been identified in the media before. She was a big local activist.
So that's basically it. Other than you writing these stories, criticizing their behavior, what's disturbing to me, beyond disturbing, was legitimate journalists that were making excuses for why you got beat up.
That means they're
And
not legitimate,
people saying
Joe.
things like
Not
play
legitimate.
stupid games, win stupid prizes. I saw stuff like that. That pick a better hobby. I saw a guy write that. You know, anti-fascists will rule. You know, Portland's not your place. I saw all this crazy shit from people with blue check marks that were saying that this is what happens when you support fascism. And I was so baffled by this. Like, I read some of your stuff. I haven't read all of it, admittedly. But I've read some of your stuff. None of it came off as you supporting fascism. It came off as you, maybe at the worst case scenario, being a contrarian and not.
Wait, how is being a contrarian bad, for one? So why would you call that the worst case scenario? Number two, Joe, who the fuck supports fascism except for Antifa? Who the fuck supports fascism? How is this even a thing that you're... What do you... I know you're talking to a normie-ass audience, but how many people in your audience have already seen this discussion? Wow, it's so weird. It's so weird.
Not wanting to go with this sort of left-wing ideology that is so widespread throughout the Pacific Northwest. But I didn't see any... I mean, first of all, you're not a white guy. We should explain to people. You are Vietnamese, and you know you're what they would consider a member of a protected class. You're not just a minority. You're openly gay. You're what do you consider yourself politically?
I've been avoiding labels for a while. I think it's interesting that a lot of the coverage on what happened to me always qualified my who I am as like a conservative journalist.
Well, the worst
whatever.
thing is the way they're labeled Quillette. They were said you work for far-right newspaper or magazine, Quillette, which is not the case at all. That's not true.
I think the subtle... I mean, the dog whistles that they're trying to say in there that this person deserved it. And of course, these are the same people who always talk about believe the victim. They were the ones who jumped on to believe Jussie Smollett. But I guess I was the wrong type of victim.
Well, exactly, because even though you seem like a very nice person, you aren't doing anything violent, you're supporting the wrong thing or not supporting them. Not just blindly supporting what Antifa is involved with, which is that is what fascism is. I mean, if you can't even question some of the more heinous things, clearly heinous things they're doing, just fucking macing people in the audience, macing people in the crowd, just pointing it at people, yelling and screaming, hitting each other with things when you're wearing masks, getting involved in these brawls. It's so fucking stupid. It's so stupid to watch. It's like this is base human behavior in its worst example. And the fact that this dumbass fucking mayor thinks that this is a good idea to let this play itself out. This is how people get shot. This is how people die. When you allow a certain amount of violence and when you condone or don't do anything with violence that you can't defend, like violence against a person like yourself. I saw those guys hitting you in the back of the head, throwing milkshakes at you where you're just trying to walk away. You weren't doing anything.
Yeah, you asked me at the beginning, how did I get the brain hemorrhage? So the video that's gone viral out there is actually the second half of the beating. I don't know if there's video of the first half. Hopefully there is through CCTV or something. But there are more hits to my face and my head. And so when I went to the hospital, because of the nature of the contusions on my head, they did a CT scan in the ER, and that confirmed the subarachnoid hemorrhage.
So what started it? What was why did you get hit?
Okay. 29th of June. Okay, that would be 10, 11 days ago from now. And so there was that demonstration happening. Antifa was rallying to oppose the far right. They claim oppose fascists. I was excited to use my new GoPro. I was a bit nervous. Going to the event, I was nervous because I'd been targeted just 2 months earlier, right? I left my house with a helmet, got in my car, saw briefly
you wore a helmet?
I had a helmet. I did have one. Saw a reflection of myself, took it off, decided I don't want anybody there to get the impression that I came, because they already accused me of being a Nazi and far right and white supremacist. I didn't want any of them to then perceive me by the fact that I came with a helmet as possibly a combatant. So I
Can you
left
be
it
a
at home.
Vietnamese white supremacist? Is that possible?
In their eyes, yes.
Hilarious.
And I mean, this goes to the bigger issue that I've taken.
Come on, Joe. You know how they roll. They actually don't care about the race of their opponents. They use the white supremacy thing because it's easy to throw at white people because white people are the majority in the United States. But if anyone else it just is like right-wing centrist or just sort of like right of fucking Mao, then they are white supremacists too, or they support white supremacy, or they're race traitors or whatever. You know, this isn't like you act like you're having this conversation for the first time. I get it. I guess you're trying to talk to your audience, you're trying to inform them, but dude, you're being just really obtuse at this point.
Take an issue with how flippant people use these accusations of not just racist or being Nazi or far right, but it's like what part of what makes Antifa so dangerous is that they feel that they are morally justified in their brutality.
Yes.
And they get actually a lot of morale from progressive and left-wing media. So after talking about what the attack, I would like to talk about how the actual militant Antifa people is small. Those who are going out and doing the violence. The larger group, and those that I find more concerning actually, are the non-violent Antifa.
You find those more concerning. Why?
Because they work to mainstream Antifa's tactics and ideas. Like now, doxing by Antifa is
Andy No is absolutely right. Absolutely right. The people on the left and the people on the left that support Antifa specifically, that themselves don't commit any violent acts, but instead they run cover for them, are more worrying. Because if a group is just being violent and they're just like out there kicking people's asses in the name of whatever cause, people, like regular people, are going to say, well, that's wrong, right? I don't know what those people are about, but I don't agree with them. But when you get Don Lemon on and he goes, Antifa means anti-fascist. These people are not violent. They're responding to violence. I don't always agree with their tactics, but we can all agree that they basically have their heart in the right place, or whatever it is he might say. That's more dangerous because it helps to normalize, and I hate to use that word because I know that we just had a whole, thing about extra credits and normalizing Nazis, but it basically makes Antifa sentiments, it's supposed to make it a mainstream belief. So in that regard, they are more dangerous because it's a way to make more people supportive, or at the very least tolerant, of Antifa. And unfortunately, I think there are far too many people already tolerant of Antifa. This is the reason why I find this podcast particularly frustrating, because Joe Rogan here is trying to figure out where Antifa might have a point. I mean, that's the only thing I can figure, okay? Or he'll try to figure out a way to make, the far right look just as bad by inciting Charlottesville, which again, I think was an unfortunate thing, but most likely an accident. I'm willing to bet, that it was an accident. Like, a guy that was at Charlottesville wasn't like, I can't wait to kill me some people with my car, get arrested, and go to serve life in prison. I just don't think that that's likely. But Joe doesn't care, so it's all about how can I make this balance. But Andy No is absolutely correct. Absolutely correct.
Kind of seen as, well, these people deserve it. Do people not realize, when you're doxing, releasing your address, as happened to me, your family's address out, it puts this constant state of fear in you, even when you're in your own home. I don't know if they realize that. So there's the doxing, and then of course, the punch the Nazi meme was meant to be cute and funny. But when they label such a large segment of the population as Nazis, it's going after a lot of people who are innocent and law-abiding, such as myself.
Well, they're also calling Jewish people Nazis,
Exactly.
which is insane.
And then now more recently, the milkshaking was seen as this cute, non-violent form of political dissent. As you saw in the video, after I was getting beaten, I was trying to get away, and then they were pelting all these liquids at my head and in my face, and that blinded me. I couldn't even see really which way to leave. So to backtrack a little bit, sorry, now I'm jumping all over.
It's okay.
The march was right in the heart of downtown. Just before I was attacked, they were chanting, "No hate, no fear." This is the irony of it. I remember that very clearly. The crowd was chanting that. I was walking towards the front of the demonstration, thought I would get a wide-angle shot on my GoPro. Before I could get there, somebody bashes me really hard in the back of the head. And I've never been in a fight, Mr. Rogan, so I didn't even realize what had happened to me. I was knocked forward, but as soon as I caught my footing, the punches kept coming from every direction, and all I could see was like people dressed in black with masks, and most of them that were hitting me had on these gloves that have the hardened knuckles. I think it's like
SAP gloves.
Yes.
Or tactical gloves. Yeah.
And it was just endless, and I could see in the background like this was in front of the Justice Center. This is the other sad irony. So in broad daylight in the heart of downtown, steps away from the Central Police Precinct, from the Sheriff's Office, this beating happened. No police intervene at any point.
Did police see it?
I don't know. Nobody came to my aid at any point, before, during, or after.
So this happens out of nowhere. You get blindsided in the back of the head. A bunch of people punch you. I mean, how many times do you think you got hit?
Maybe 6 or more.
The fact that people dismiss this as not being a big deal is really horrific to me.
It is.
The fact that the people that are in Antifa that are nonviolent folks, which I think, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to bring that up, that it's the extreme of the extremists, right? It's the people that think that there's a call for violence and that there's a reason to do it. And even someone like yourself that is a nonviolent person is just there as a journalist, that there is a justification for just for whatever reason you want, just go up to that person and start hitting them. Even though they're not a threat, even though they're not doing anything to harm anybody, even though they're not putting anybody in danger, they're just being a journalist and you feel like you could justify hitting them. It's really disgusting. And it's I mean, there was this thing with Vox where Carlos Meza was minimizing the impact of Antifa and kind of joking around about it and making it seem like it's just no big deal. And he got really upset because Steven Crowder was making fun of the fact that he's gay and the fact that he talks with a lisp, and that Crowder mentioned that along with mocking his stance on Antifa. And then it became this gigantic thing that Steven Crowder is a gay basher. What didn't become a big deal is that this guy is minimizing violent fascists. And that's how I feel about this.
You're missing another point, Joe. Carlos Maza trying to call Steven Crowder a gay basher for making fun of his lisp and calling him a queer when Carlos Maza himself describes himself as queer, and we have a Q in the LGBTQ acronym, tells you that what he's trying to do is tell Antifa that it's okay to attack Crowder as well. Because Carlos Maza believes that violence is okay under certain circumstances, because if you're morally right, then you have the right to hurt people. And he wants Crowder to know, and he wants Antifa to know, that if they happen to attack Crowder, that's okay, because Crowder is practicing wrongthink. I saw, I'll give you an example. Vosh, who's a far left YouTuber, made a stream. I think he was talking to Hunter Avallone, or Blair White. I think it was Blair White, actually. And Steven Crowder just came up in conversation. Just came up. I don't remember what the context was, but they weren't really talking about Crowder. And you could see Vosh become emotionally angry the instant his name came up. And he said, Crowder's a fucking actual Nazi. Fuck that guy, okay? I'm sorry, but Steven Crowder is not a Nazi. Not even close. Like, I mean, I'm not even gonna get into the whole, like, Nazis are not right, you know, they're not right wing anyway. It's all part of the left's plan, or at least Antifa's plan, to demonize right wingers by claiming that they are something that They just aren't. But Crowder is just your basic milquetoast, middle of the road conservative dude. There's nothing else. There's nothing controversial about him. He's just your average conservative Christian, and that's just incorrect. And like anyone who understands the way that politics works, even if they have like a layman's understanding, and I'm pretty sure Carlos Maza does, knows that that does not make Steven Crowder a Nazi. But it's not about whether or not it's true. It's about whether or not accusations that Crowder is a Nazi, whether or not those have, let's say that they have a tactical value. So to just say that he is one, if that has a usefulness to it, then fucking they're gonna use it. They don't care. So it's not about whether or not it's true. It's about whether or not it's expedient. And that's all it is. That's all it is, Joe.
When you're trying to enforce your own ideology on other people and you have no tolerance for anybody with a differing opinion, particularly journalists, that is fascism. It's so ironic to call yourself an anti-fascist when you're literally enforcing your own particular ideology to the point of violence, and you're wearing masks and you're running around hitting people and pretending that you're being inundated with Nazis and white supremacists and that this is all necessary. Like that old man that was just driving and they're directing traffic and forcing him to obey them. And then when he doesn't want to, they chase after him and assault him. It's fucking bananas. And the fact that this city has not stepped in and recognized that they have a real problem because this has got momentum behind it. And the people that are involved that are nonviolent, you gotta speak up. They've gotta speak up. If you're a person that really believes that there shouldn't be...
The problem is that the people there are people who won't speak up because they agree. They just don't have the balls to actually be violent like Antifa. They're even more cowardly. And you have to consider that the problem we have is that there are people that are far left enough that they're okay with this, but they just wouldn't do it themselves. Or they're like Eric and fucking Brett Weinstein, wherein they don't like what Antifa is doing because it makes the left look bad, and that they actually have a bigger problem with the far right, whatever the fuck that means, rising up, okay? And so therefore, their main problem, guys like Eric and Brett Weinstein, their main problem isn't that Antifa is violent, although it is in part, and it isn't that the what they want to bring in is actually going to like hurt a lot more people if they get their way. Their utopian communist vision is going to kill millions. That's not the problem. The problem is that the way they're doing it just makes the rest of us look bad. And that it might cause more problems in the future, because if the far right like gets their way, then I guess real fascism is gonna happen? I don't know. But there are people like that, and they're supposedly intellectuals. There is no rise in the far right. It's not happening. You don't even know what far right fucking means. The only thing that you're worried about is a different group of leftists. You're fighting, it's leftists fighting leftists. And then the whole narrative is just fucked, because it's just, who is it that's on the left that we're fighting against? Like it's the real point of antagonism. Let me put it this way. Is that there are leftists, Antifa, communists, radical feminists, just regular fucking feminists, the mainstream media. They are leftists by and large, and they're arguing their enemy is the quote-unquote alt-right, which the only people who might present something of a threat to them, which are basically another group of leftists, like Richard Spencer and the alt-right. But those guys, they have no power, they're very small, and these people have to know that. So what do they do instead? They say, oh, it's Trump supporters. Why do we even describe regular ass Americans that want the best for this country and hope the president does well as Trump supporters? They're just Americans. Ultimately, what we're dealing with is it's Antifa versus the rest of the sane country. That's how it should be framed, because that's the truth.
Be homophobia and there shouldn't be violence and there shouldn't be white supremacy. Good for you. You probably got involved in this for all the right reasons.
What about black supremacy, Joe? What about Mexican nationalism, Joe? What about people who hate the people on the left that hate the Jews, Joe? What about, like, why is it you say, well, white supremacy is bad? Okay, I guess it's, I mean, I don't agree with it. But what about other kinds of supremacy? Are those also bad? Are we giving that a pass because white people? This is my problem with this whole discussion. My problem with this whole discussion is it is framed in the way that Antifa and the far left want. They want people talking about the far right like it's white supremacy. It's not. It's got nothing to do with that. And this is like, you're just playing right into it, and you're surrounded by people who want you to think this way. Because I'm sorry, Brett and Eric Weinstein are not stupid. So when they tell you, I have a problem with the white supremacists on the far right, they are feeding you lies. They are lying. The far right is not white supremacist. The far right is nationalist, which doesn't have a color. You are literally giving them what they want. The fucking this is the intellectual dark web, everybody. These people are the ones with the largest voices and the largest platforms trying to talk about what's going on in this country, and they have it fucking wrong. Wrong!
But if you don't recognize that someone like you yourself, who is a person of a different ethnicity, you're not a white person, you're Vietnamese, you're a gay man, and you got assaulted for no reason. You didn't do anything. I mean, it's almost like a test of where do your values truly lie. And if you think it's okay for a person like you to just get assaulted for no reason, you are the problem. You're the problem. Your mindset is the problem. It's not whether or not there should be white supremacy. Of course there shouldn't be. It's not whether or not there shouldn't be people be able to freely express themselves. Of course there should be. That is not what the issue is. What the issue is group mob mentality. When you get people together and you let them wear masks and you tell them that they're fighting against some evil, and then they feel justified in hitting a person like you. It is really sickening. And there's this diffusion of responsibility thing that happens when one person hits you and everybody feels like it's okay to hit you. It's a mob mentality thing, and it is extremely common with human beings. I've been in mob situations. It's terrifying because you feel it in the air. You feel the chaos in the air when you're in some sort of a large-scale brawl type situation. Like anything can happen. People just run up on people and start punching them. It's not like two people alone in like an open area where they can talk and work things out. No, it's chaos, and there's some weird animal activity. There's some weird animal instinct aspect to it that is very unique to humans. And when you see something like this and see a guy like you just getting peppered with milkshakes and punched in the head, and it's fucking disturbing. And for these people to dismiss that and not stand up and say, hey, this is not what we're supposed to be about. This is not what I signed up for. They become a part of the problem. I'm sure there's people listening to this that are upset at this because maybe you support Antifa. You support their ideology. Think about what you actually support. Think about what this is really all about. What you shouldn't be supporting is people wearing masks, running around fucking hitting people. You ain't changing shit with that. All you're going to do is call for more people with masks from the other side. If people feel like right-wing people are being attacked, and I don't think you're even right-wing, are you? I mean, if you had a...
That's not important, Joe. Whether or not he's right-wing isn't important. And... also, being right-wing should not be seen as a pejorative, but it is, largely. And you have to wonder why. Why is that? Why are people afraid to call themselves right-wing? Why is it when you were talking about the girl who got bear maced because she was wearing a Make Bitcoin Great Again hat, you said, well, she wasn't even... people thought that she was wearing a MAGA hat, but she wasn't even wearing a MAGA hat. She was wearing a Make Bitcoin Great Again MAGA hat, so she totally didn't deserve that. See, what you're doing is you're saying implicitly, if she was wearing a MAGA hat, then maybe I could understand. No! That shouldn't be happening to anyone. Under any circumstances, unless you're literally defending yourself against an attacker, dude. Like, it's not important, Joe. It doesn't matter what these people think they're doing or what the reasons are. They are wrong. Let me see. Don't let Joe Rogan color your mood. No, I'm okay. I mean, I watched this stream already. And I think it's important to see what guys like, you know, Joe Rogan and the Weinstein brothers are saying, because they are the top. Like, unfortunately, the fact is that on this culture war discussion, those guys are what the people are considering them to be the authority. All right. And I think that one of the reasons is that within the Weinstein's case, it's kind of like how Gamergate was, where people thought that a person who was on the left that was criticizing, journos and stuff, that for some reason that made their criticisms more valid because, you know, if you're on the left yourself, then that means that I guess you're in a better position to criticize or whatever. But the fact is, you don't have to be. Like, if you just know what you're talking about, you know, and you're making a good case, then that's all that matters. But like, it's not. Look, I'm. Thanks for your concern, but I'm fine. All right, this is a beard. I will just erase this stuff here. Anyway, is Jordan Peterson still a part of it? Yeah, I think he is. He's like the only guy from the intellectual dark web that I'm okay with. I think, let me think, who else is in there? I mean, Dave Rubin, for some reason, he doesn't even like have his own ideas. Joe Rogan, he annoys me. Actually, they mostly annoy me. Even Jordan Peterson has some things where I'm like, dude, you're giving too much ground to the left right now. Or it means you disagree for more than just tribal reasons. I don't think I ever listened to anybody associated with the intellectual dark web. Yeah, Peterson I listen to sometimes. But it's not even for his politics stuff. It's more for his, like, a discussion around, you know, his stuff about morality and meaning. And, you know, I like those things. I think on the politics end of it, I don't know. I don't know if Peterson's a bit better, but I think that I'd still find him annoying at times, you know. And the thing is too is that like the arguments start getting repetitive. Like you're like, oh, I've heard that already. It's just not being challenged in the way that I think it should be. So. Now, you know what? Maybe I'm going to get rid of this. He's just going to have hair all, just like the whole thing, like from there down. I don't know what you mean by, or it means you disagree for more than just tribal reasons. That character looks like he eats peanut butter with a fork. I was, yeah, that's funny. Well, he's a big, strong guy, so... But he is a character. All right, I'm gonna put on more Joe, but no, actually, it's time for me to wrap up. It's like 3 minutes till, and I got to set up another show for. It's gonna be going live in about an hour. and I don't want to be late. So I'll play a little bit more of this and get out of here.
A gun to your head or a mace to your face. What would you say you're a centrist? What would you say?
I think it's fair to describe me as center-right.
Center-right, okay. Which is fine. It should be okay. I mean, we should be allowed to have disagreements of ideologies and of political persuasions, political leanings. But it's twisted. And it's twisted the way it's being depicted in the media. It's very strange how it's being dismissed. It's very strange. And that there's really people in 2019 debating whether or not it's okay to assault journalists. It's fucking madness.
Well, we've been seeing the build-up to this for years. Political violence coming from the left is seen as moral. And unfortunately, even those working in mainstream media have at times excused or found that type of violence good. I'm thinking of Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon at CNN.
Yes.
And I wonder if that played a role in why they were the only center-left broadcast news network to invite me on to speak. No other left of center media has invited me on to any of those shows.
And when they had you on to speak, what was their attitude about all this?
I think the host was very respectful and fair.
Who hosted? Who was it?
John Brennan, I think.
So you think they were respectful and fair. Did it bother you that people like Chris Cuomo and Don Lemon had openly supported Antifa?
It did. This was kind of encouraged me to continue doing my work months ago, even last year when I was getting threatened, because it seemed like I don't think Chris or Don actually I think they're ignorant about Antifa.
I think you're right.
You know, they fall and they believe the propaganda about them that it's just an anti-fascist movement.
Well, the name of it by itself.
I'm hoping that, like, even with my injuries and
Fuck Joe. Joe! They are journalists. It's their job to know the truth. If they're ignorant about Antifa, it either means that they're bad at their job or Antifa's got masterful fucking propaganda. I'm gonna go with they're lying. They're journalists. It's their job to know. If they don't know, how the fuck are they working at CNN, Joe? Holy shit. Okay, anyway, that is one pissed off Santa Claus. I gotta go because I gotta get ready for the next show and I gotta take my dog for a walk. But here are the sketches as they currently sit. These are, I want to say they're antagonists. I know that the guy on the left, on the right is. I think this guy is too. I just got the name, so I wasn't really sure. I should probably ask Micah to tell me whether I'm dealing with antagonists or protagonists, because I draw them in a slightly different way depending on whether I know, if they're good guys or bad guys. So I think these guys are good guys, or I'm sorry, bad guys. But that's kind of where, I didn't draw the guy's shoes. Holy shit. I'll have to do that. Tomorrow is Friday. I'll do it then. And I have these two, which are supporting characters on the protagonist side. That's why they're happy and good looking people. And these guys are sketchier, but anyways, I gotta head out. So I want to thank you guys for coming on. I'll read some of your comments and then get out of here. So Great Indoors 1979 says, I am right wing, extreme right wing actually. National Socialism is left wing. Yeah. I thought okay, anyway, a lefty who supports the right. To the other lefties, he seems like he has reasons besides just tribally attacking the left. Yes. Yeah, they just think he's a Nazi too. If he supports things like free speech and like he's like anti-violence and shit like that. Center right, filthy fence sitter. That's one pissed off Santa Claus, by the way. This divide between left and right really got momentum with George W. Bush. Yeah, I think people started doubling down during the Occupy movement. But 9/11, I think, was sort of like the pebble in a lot of ways. The Great Indoor says, I guess they never got over the Florida vote in 2000. Well, and then there's Michael Moore, but that's a whole other fucking bag of worms, or maybe a 10-pound plate of lasagna, depending on whether or not you are Michael Moore. All right, well, anyway, I'm going to get out of here. I'll see you guys on Badger live streams later on. We're going to be doing another fundraiser stream. And with that said, give me a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and leave me a comment. Thanks, guys, for coming on, and I'll talk to you guys later. Have a good one, everybody.